Test. 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 Okay. So it seems it's going now. So basically what I've been working on a little bit recently is going and more or less porting some of the Wolfenstein 3D code and data into ROTT and similar. Partial reason for that is that the original Wolfenstein 3D engine has licensing terms that are a little bit problematic. So testing out an alternative, more or less. Yeah. So it's basically, yeah, the normal ROTT menus and other things like that, because it's technically the ROTT engine, but as can be seen, it is a Wolfenstein 3D map. So yeah. Some small fragments of code from the iOS port have been used in this, but yeah, I'm trying to keep it reasonably close to the normal ROTT engine. So yeah. So push walls work roughly as about as they did. I might later go and switch over to the original enemies and sound effects and sprites and similar, but that would be a little bit more effort than I put into it at present. At the moment, I was mostly working on basically being able to try to get the maps and textures imported. So yeah, this basically works because, as noted, ROTT was effectively based on a modified version of the original Wolfenstein engine. So technically it's not too much of a stretch to sort of hack stuff together and get it working. Yeah. admittedly before this, I had started a little bit of work on trying to do a port of the original engine and similar, but it had not particularly ideal licensing terms, so that's kind of why I went this route. Yeah, if not for the uncertain licensing terms, I might have just gone with the original, or with the original Wolf3D engine. But I'll probably make this work. So yeah, as noted, thus far it's yeah, using all of the sprites and AIs and other things from Rise of the Triad right now. But that may or may not change. Yeah, this here is a bug. I'd like, intended to summon up a different enemy, but appeared to have got the numbers wrong and got this guy instead. So yeah. But seems to spawn in a broken form that doesn't actually do anything, so yeah. And yeah, I used the monks in place of the dogs because there was annoyingly enough not really anything in ROTT that's directly equivalent to the dog. But and for right now it's basically just a renumbering hack anyway, so yeah. And also using ROTT's color palette, which doesn't exactly match the original Wolf3D color palette either. So some things look a little bit wonky in the approximation.
Shoot 'em!
I guess arguably that wouldn't be an issue if I were using 16 or 16-bit colors, but my current port of the ROTT engine is still using 256 color graphics. But that's admittedly partly because the game makes use of various power animation tricks, which if I switched over to using high color, the power animation would not work. Guess I may as well head over to where the exit's at. Yeah, making the little exit elevators work as before is still to be done. For now, I'm just sort of interpreting the exit elevators in roughly the same way as as the little end arches at the ends of the map. So that's how I'm doing it. So this map is not particularly exciting because it's pretty much square. Yeah. This can be noted the Wolfenstein 3D maps are generally a little bit smaller than the Rise of the Triad maps, so it basically sort of sticks it in the middle here. And I'll reset and go back to the first map for this one. So this map's less square, so it's more obvious, but so roughly the same way as in ROTT, the outside of the map is basically padded with empty space, so if I leave the map I can wander around the outside. Originally the Wolfenstein maps were padded with an array of basically solid blocks, but I noted that I can sort of detect the difference between the blocks that are outside the map and simply used as filler from blocks that are actually relevant to the map structure, and it sort of filters out the blocks that are simply space holders. So as for why the map is partly in the middle-ish area of the ROTT map rather than up in the corners. Originally, when I was in the importing logic, I just put it up more or less, just in the corner here. But turns out the engine uses basically this corner, I think, up here, if I remember correctly, for actually holding a bunch of parameters related to the map, like how tall to make it, and like what sky and floor texture to use, and other stuff like this, which basically if you put a map up in the just directly up in the corner, and it has anything of note in that area, then when it's imported it sort of ends up leaving a visible hole in the map, which on a few maps was noticeable, so I ended up putting the map over in the middle part here, as now it has basically roughly about a 32 block pad, or 32 block pad protecting it from the sort of infamous corner there. Oh, yeah. In this case, I have gone and used ROTT's map format, so yeah, so it's using that rather than the original Wolf3D map format. So, but they're pretty similar, just some differences. So, yeah, not nowhere near as drastic as it would be for like something like a or a Doom importer or anything, because they are still basically working on a or basically working as a grid of numbers representing everything in the world. So yeah. Wasn't exactly which one I was intending to use, but yeah. Yeah, that was more annoying than I was intending there. Managed to accidentally hit the wrong one. So that's a little more what I was intending to go for. Usual no clipping issue applies. Namely, if I no clip into somewhere, then you can't see anything. But initially, I was doing the port, I did try replacing the dog with the robot thing, but robot thing was way too difficult to kill or anything, so that was not a good match. I'll see if how it goes this time. But when you flame wall the guys, they don't actually burst into flames until you open the doors to trigger the areas they're in. So
Die.
oh yeah. Figured I'd head over to the exit because not that much is interesting on this map right now. So yeah, if I remember correctly, this is the original problem area because since this part of the map here overlapped um, the with this sort of spot, so we're encoding all the map parameters and similar. Um, this whole area right here was basically pruned off. There's kind of an interesting area in this map, but it's basically on the other side of the map. I have to remember how to get over to it. Well, preferably without just no clipping over there. But, doesn't seem like much thus far, like, you know, normal push walls, but miscolored push walls. Then you have this weird green, or this weird corridor. Or this weird corridor of these blocks that don't really import very well. But, if I do much with this port, I might, change that. Or might do something to make this look nicer. Whether it's, you know, going and actually migrating the ROTT engine over to 16 or over to 16-bit color or something else, I'm not sure. Kind of to be decided. I guess one remote possibility would be kind of a using kind of a hybrid mode, where the rendering is primarily 16-bit, but then it basically uses a special color or a special encoding that can also encode palette colors, and it can use palette colors for things that need to use palette animation, but that wouldn't really work for all the effects, so unless I were to more or less redesign how it does some things, but maybe. Guess that's one downside about things that got clever with the way they use the original VGA is doesn't quite work as pretty when you're not running it on a VGA. So the little clever trixies originally actually become more of a hassle. Um, as noted, this is just running natively on Windows because for this particular test it made more sense to test on Windows than to bother with testing it in my emulator, because things I test in Windows I can things I test in Windows I can use the Visual Studio debugger similar, which is kind of helpful.
Shoot 'em.
Figured I showed off what was interesting on this map already. So yeah, this is map 4. Trying to figure out if there's anything particularly interesting on this map, apart from the obvious swastika that's encoded in the map, but
Shoot 'em.
I'm going to announce with the Wolfenstein 3D maps as they are kind of a little bit of a maze sometimes, so anything notable on this map? another one of these guys. They get more common, but get around to renumbering that.
Shoot 'em. Shoot 'em.
Going to take a detour this time over here.
Shoot 'em. Die.
Check something here. So, seems anyone is joining the stream, the answer is nope. Again, if anyone joins the stream and or finds it interesting, it's kind of doubtful anyways, but yeah.
Shoot 'em.
Oh, where am I? I saw that, figured I'd get that, and now onto the exit. Don't remember if there's anything interesting on this map, but
Shoot 'em.
figured I might, like, you know, refrain from lingering and might just decide to head out of here. And now I'm on to him.
Shoot him.
Hmm. Seems my memory might have been influenced a little bit by the Doom version of this map.
Shoot him.
Or no, it's straight up a different map.
Die. Shoot him.
Actually, I'm admittedly almost a little disappointed. Although there wasn't exactly going to be a chain gun guy to battle, or chain gun on guy to battle on this map anyway, so... Oh. Never mind then. Yeah, this is more like it. I was confused because I was expecting this map, but I was at that other map. So yeah, fair enough. The Doom version of the map had secrets on this side as well, but original Wolfenstein, I think it only has this stuff over here. no multi-layered secrets, and well, yeah, and these don't raise up either. So, a more simple version versus the Doom version. And there shouldn't, the boss shouldn't have spawned because um, I haven't mapped that over to anything yet, so should be nothing here apart from the ability to leave. Oh yeah. But to do is had the boss guy, and not sure what will happen when I go over here because I've not actually gone this far yet. But what should happen is, should function mostly as a normal exit and then take me to the next map. Didn't get a good chance to look at that, but yeah. Okay, I have a chance to look at it now, but it looks like garbage. I guess whatever texture this was, it didn't exactly get imported correctly. So still might be a little debugging needed. Another of these guys. For a second there I was almost half expecting to see a redo version of the first map. Because well, Doom pulled that trick a few times, but I've not actually been this far in on this yet. Because yeah. Mostly it's like in my testing I've mostly just been poking around on the first few maps, and then usually whatever I wanted to test was already tested before I got all that far. But right now I'm just poking around.
Die.
And probably need to fix whatever's causing that unkillable floating head, but yeah. this stuff. Left wondering that if that's supposed to be a skylight or something. Though in ROTT there's no real way to make it a skylight without also making the ceiling be sky. And I don't think that's what Wolfenstein intended. But yeah. Because I'm pretty sure this isn't this wasn't meant to be an outdoor map. But oh yeah, back at the start. Open question of if the walls being a different color makes them too obvious. Yeah. And half remembering like those sort of commercials that imply that people doing game dev is mostly playing games, and at least at the moment that's almost what it seems like would be being implied. But yeah, normally I wouldn't be digging around this long, but maybe, you never know, might reveal bugs. And this engine isn't exactly short on bugs anyways. So as much as it might seem like it's not crashy, sometimes dig around a bunch and generally one will find something that crashes. of this, whatever is going on here. Guess maybe I could, maybe it might make sense to write a tool to spit out the various textures as like TGA or PNGs or something, so I can have some idea what they look like and which one is which. And maybe I could figure out which one that is and what it's supposed to be. Which might be, you know, helpful to know. So, a lock key door. Is it a key on the map? You know, it would turn out to be funny as if the one time the key door actually works if there wasn't a key on the map. Or the wrong key. But, first I'd need to find where it's at. Note that the auto map is, due to weird technical implementation reasons, actually still showing the original ROTT textures. So what's seen in the auto map here is basically what everything would look like. Yeah, if I weren't using the Wolfenstein 3D textures and instead just using the ROTT textures. Due to potentially asinine technical reasons, it's actually still using the same texture numbers as if it were using the ROTT textures. Okay, so I now have a silver key, and we'll work on the silver key door. The first detour. saw another secret there. Oh yeah. Got silver key. Open silver key door. So that I can... where am I? Back into the same area. And as noted previously, poke around enough and eventually something will crash. So, oh yeah, what I was partly mentioning is why it's using the original ROTT texture numbers is because of this kind of weird and annoying thing of, well, the tile map. Namely, in that it's basically using these index numbers as both the lump index, which is one thing, but also they're being used as keys to trigger other logic in the render and similar, which basically means taken naively, you have a number that's both a lump number and a index driving game logic. So if you go and straightforwardly, like, just resolved the block numbers to different lumps like you would with, like, watt, or with watt as it functions normally, and then just use those as a new tile map entries, then it goes and breaks stuff. So instead of just being able to look them up as lump numbers and then using those and stuff in the tile map, you actually have to keep them with what they would have been in the, or keep them in the same positions they would have been in the original ROTT WAD. But then, like, I do a remap hack later. So in this case, it's, takes the tile map version of the lump numbers, then runs them through a lookup table to get the numbers that you'd be using for the Wolfenstein 3D textures, which is kind of an ugly hack, but yeah, this engine is kind of fun like that. And then also a lot of real fun things here, like they'll be extra pedantic about game logic things, like yeah, in this case it looks like one of the push wall things didn't work quite as it's supposed to. So, and it's an open question of if this is even the same interpretation of what it was meant to mean in Wolfenstein 3D, which I'd have to look at the code some more for that, but yeah. Technically, this is the one I was using for the Wolf3D one because this is the one that behaves like the Wolf3D push walls. But this one's a different type. Mm-hmm. Since I'm pretty sure like Wolfenstein doesn't use this feature, or these features, the simple solution is if it's in Wolfenstein mode 2, you know, just make them not do anything. So but not going to be able to get that over that there that easily to test if this works, but yep. So as noted, I didn't exactly go and directly add the logic into the raw engine to import the um, walls in the format that the iOS Wolf was using, or Wolf3D iOS, which is where I was borrowing code and data from. But instead, it feeds it through another converter that converts it into the format ROTT uses. So similar goes for the maps. So in this case, yeah, it spits out an RTL file containing all the Wolf3D maps and a WOD file containing the maps. For this, I ended up making a slight addition to basically allow me to manually specify an RTL file on the command line, which is a reason which, or a feature which for whatever reason ROTT was lacking. So in this case, if you specify an RTL on the command line, it will override whatever one ROTT was using, which allows other possibilities. So if I take this off, if I take that off, so now what's going to happen is that it's going to use the texture replacement WOD, but it will, just go back to using the default level files. which, yeah, if I, you know, just, yeah, use the original RTL files, use different different texture watts, it leads to this amazing occurrence of, basically, yeah, ROTT using Wolfenstein 3D textures. And yeah, at least assuming I didn't break something, the engine should, you know, still work roughly about the same as it did before. But can't necessarily prove that, or prove that I haven't broken anything, but here's a texture that got mangled, or is mangled for some reason. Not figured that out quite as of yet. But you get lots of extra fun, like, you know, these flame shooters are using, like, you know, little portrait stuff. think I'll go over here because I it's all like, may as well come back here and get this. But yeah, the point I was getting at earlier is, yeah, I'm trying to do this stuff in a way that preferably doesn't break the ability to ROTT, or of ROTT to still function as ROTT. So, being conservative. And this is one of those palette tricks that I was mentioning. It might look like this is an animated texture, like just cycling through texture frames or similar, except as far as I can tell, it's actually using a palette trick for some of these colors. Like there's a few different palette entries, which rather than staying at a single constant color will sort of cycle a little bit, which is apparently used, from what I can tell, used in a few places for like, little animated cycly effects like this. Just the premise being you can, in some of these cases, cycle the palette, and that's, less complicated and expensive than like, actually using different texture images, or at least probably saves a little bit of space. Then again, it could be animated textures for all I know. I haven't really dug around in the code that much to figure out where exactly they're using palette cycling and where exactly they're using where exactly they're using animated textures, so yeah. Yeah, that's sort of a thing of when converting stuff over to the palette. It is kind of necessary to ignore the last few colors and stuff, because there's, funky stuff going on. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. For the most part, yeah. If switching from a palette to high color, not that much would change. It's just possibly it might break a few of the little texture animations and a few other effects like that. And also, like Doom, I'd probably have to switch over to using alpha blending and similar for doing the color flashes rather than using palette tricks. But yeah. And what's going on here is, for whatever reason, the index 1 or or texture index 1 isn't actually getting replaced, so it's, you know, still using the stock ROTT texture. But similar is happening with the elevator texture, namely texture 16, I think. So yeah, so texture 1 and texture 16 aren't actually getting replaced correctly, but I'm not sure the reason why as of yet. Yes, I'm not remembering something. I think I'll play the demo. Track something. Looks still good on here, or on this end. But, seems that for whatever reason when I'm streaming, Firefox starts having problems. Oh. And I got distracted from what I was going to do. So I'll see how many of the Wolfenstein 3D textures show through to these here demos. Which, ironically enough, with my debugging efforts, rather than like making the demos, more broken, seem to have actually started making them work a little better to some extent. Which sort of implies which I guess like it's kind of curious, and it sort of implies that like my debugging effort isn't that fundamentally changing how the game behaves, but it's actually for some reason making it behave closer to how the original DOS version behaved, which is in a way just sort of curious, but yeah, that map didn't exactly have a lot of Wolfenstein textures going on, so not that much notable there, but yeah, it's kind of one of those things. And it did actually exit, or more like it crashed, but either way, I wasn't intending it to keep running, so not too huge of a loss. Oh. May as well fix that, because that's obviously not right. So, as noted, this was ported originally this was originally written for DOS and similar, and lots of blatant DOSisms still linger here and there. So, in a sense, what's going on here is it's straight up trying to um, copy like a or an exit screen into text mode memory, so that it could go back into text mode and show an exit screen of text. But of course, that's not going to work if well, if we're not in DOS and not actually running on DOS-like hardware. So yeah, besides cleaning up the DOS-isms that exist in the ROTT engine, well, pretty much everywhere, there's also like fixing whatever the hell is going on with these phrases. Fixing up the formatting for this engine is sort of a challenge in and of itself sometimes, but yeah. Now I'll see if I can exit cleanly. And it appears to have exited, so fixed. Yeah, it's kind of fun, or kind of funny in a way that, like, you know, debugging it in ways that could have potentially changed stuff ended up actually making it behave more close to apparently whatever the original version they recorded those demos on did. Which is kind of unexpected, but kind of useful. Possibly implies that I'm not, like, you know, at least wantonly going around and breaking stuff. So, no. So yeah, as noted, this particular session I was mostly working on the ROTT and Wolf3D stuff, looking some at the iOS or Wolf3D iOS code to figure out how some of the stuff works, and you know, doing some of the logic to glue it onto ROTT and similar, which is via a combination of conversion tools and some modifications to the engine code, like some logic to remap the object numbers and similar. Then writing out another random idea based on something that came up on Usenet of if I were doing yet another version of my ISA or another clean implementation, how I'd do it with what I know now, but might do a few things a little bit differently in the name of trying to be cleaner. Like realizing that the current instruction layout I'm using, or current ordering I'm using, isn't quite optimal, and possibly going back to the original Super H layout for 16-bit instructions might actually be a little bit better. So in this idea spec, that's more or less what I would have done. And 32-bit ops would have been laid out more like this. So just directly going on from the 16-bit pattern and stuff. So all the 2R and 3R forms basically use this form layout, which is not particularly drastic or unusual, and likewise a lot of this stuff would be kind of similar to how it is, not exactly the same but kind of similar, and would probably include the jumbo forms directly in the base encoding. So in place of in place of the normal basically in place of the block that normally loads a 25-bit immediate into R0, it would function as one of several possible interpretations. Namely, it would function as either a 24-bit branch or subroutine call, so branch with a 24-bit displacement, or a subroutine call with a 24-bit displacement, or depending on which mode it is, it also works as a conditional branch or a predicated WEX block, or it can also function as a jumbo prefix. This isn't too far from how it works in BJX2 already, but the encoding is a little bit different, and it effectively would add 4 bits to the displacement for these particular instruction forms, but sort of just how it worked out. But this version would effectively double the amount of encoding space used up for 32-bit instructions, so they'd be using up 4 of the 12-bit blocks in the 16-bit space, or roughly about a quarter of the total encoding space. So yeah, have less 16-bit encoding space versus the current instruction set, but it would be, it would be manageable. the main sacrifice in terms of the encoding was, well, the encoding is basically mostly the same basic instructions as before, just moved around slightly, and a little bit of reorganization here and there, and but it does lose the ability to directly load a 12-bit immediate value, so no more ability to load a 12-bit immediate into R0. So R0 is much less special than it was before. And also this idea would get rid of the push and pop instructions, instead well, consolidating all the stack relative loads and stores into one block. So here's all the stack relative loads and stores with the control register op stuck in there because these encodings were left over, and yeah, put something here. Not yet like clear if I will actually do anything with this or not, but it's just a random idea that came up. Haven't written out or filled out the table for the 32-bit ops, but it would probably be pretty similar. And actually the plan would be that for a lot of these blocks and similar, the actual encoding in instruction space would be roughly the same as it already is with BJX2. It's just, slightly or the bits are slightly reorganized, mostly. The actual change needed to the Verilog code to be able to, or to switch over to this ISA would be probably not too drastic, but it would be a fair bit more effort for the compiler. But as is even for BJX2, the compiler's a fair bit of a hack in these areas, because at the it initially sort of starts generating generating the machine code in a format much closer to how I originally designed it, but then the ISA changed around to some extent, so it ends up with like a lot of hackery after the fact stuff to change out to the change it out to the current encoding and stuff. But not really sure I want to engage in, like, more or less losing a bunch of progress in order to chase like yet another pretty significant redesign. So mostly I'll probably won't do much with this, but just a thought. It is in some ways a little bit more elegant than the current design, so I don't know. But yeah, in this one I was considering, if it were to be done, there would be some additional restrictions, like probably it would tend towards like keeping the actual instruction stream always 30 or almost always 32-bit lined, with the main exception being when it's executing 16-bit instructions in scalar code, where for pure scalar code it would allow the instruction stream to fall back to a 16-bit alignment, but whenever it starts executing, like, code that's using WEX or similar, then it would have to be forced back to a 32-bit alignment, which could potentially reduce the cost of the instruction cache slightly. So, yeah. Some other restrictions would be similar to the current instruction set, and it would also drop a few features that add cost but don't really benefit that much. Like, for example, push and pop instructions would go away in this form. So no more push and pop. Instead, the idea would be that you would have to use stack relative loads and stores in order to implement the same basic functionality as push and pop. So, though it seems like it would be a drawback, is, in that case you also have to have instructions to adjust SP. In practice, it doesn't make that big of a difference, and it actually, because it has less interlock issues, works out a little bit faster. So, but yeah, it's partly phasing out the use of push and pop has already been done in my existing instruction set, but because they're still in the ISA and still used by stuff, I can't just, make them disappear entirely. But, well. Yeah, that was just something. But, yeah, trying to think of if I have anything else more to say at the moment. Otherwise, yeah, just sort of sitting around at home because I have some time off and randomly working on stuff. So, yeah. Some ways instruction set design can be like an endless trade-off between, like, make something that works and is possibly good enough, or try to make everything perfect. Seemingly, whenever one tries to make everything good, then more stuff pops up that, wants to basically break everything that one's done thus far, and so on. And so, after a little while, yeah, a lot of hair develops. So, kind of the state it's gotten in. My instruction set diverged a little bit from what it was originally, and now it's built up a little bit of hair. Not sure if it's enough hair to actually justify the massive amount of effort in breaking stuff that, like, trying to switch over to a yet another redesign would cause. But it's a question of is it if the current form or if its current form is basically good enough. Uh, yeah, until recently I thought it was probably good enough, even despite some oh, some of the hair that's developed in a few places. Um, the main reason hair is a problem is because you know little hacks and bits of hacks and hairiness in the design do increase basically cost and or cause issues for like the FPGA implementation. So they cost or little things cost LUTs or yeah they add to the LUT cost and similar and can also affect timing and other things. But it's not really clear how much that could be saved because if I look in it, the decoder is roughly about 3,000. Yeah, about 3.3 thousand. And the total cost is about 60,000. So even if the cost of the decoder suddenly went to zero, that would still be only maybe about a 3% difference. Well, actually, closer to 5% considering it's both. There's two of these things. I also have a calculator so I can, so times 2 because I have two of these. So looks like the decoder is roughly about 11% of my total LUT cost. So, if I could save like a few percent there, that might be something. But that's about all I can really expect, just from ISA cleanup. Unless, getting rid of push or eliminating push and pop saved a bit more. But that's uncertain. But that wouldn't necessarily require like a full ISA redesign. That would basically just require eliminating any use of those instructions from the ASM code and then, just sort of casually disabling them. Which is, at least a remote possibility. So about 2,000 are used from the instruction set. Slightly trying to clean up the instruction encoding could help a little bit here as well, but probably not all that drastically though. The data cache is actually quite a bit more expensive at about 8,000. So and I have to double this because I have two of these. So about 28% of the total cost is going into the L1 data cache. So so yeah, this would basically be the area I'd probably want to more focus on reducing the cost of, but the downside of this particular area is, well, a redesign wouldn't really help this much at all. So but yeah, this can be the cost of the L1 can be reduced by like some things like, making it smaller or similar, but yeah, that's kind of the problem. But part of the cost is because, it tries to be fast, or at least moderately fast, and it also allows like, arbitrary byte aligned access up to 64 bits, which is not exactly free either. I could reduce the I could like reduce the maximum unit that you have unaligned access to, say like, only up to 32 bits can be accessed with arbitrary alignment, but that kind of sucks because ability to use misaligned quad word loads and stores is helpful for things like memory copies and similar. And there is a benefit of using quad words over double words when it comes to memory copies, because yeah. Well, other than that, yeah, not that much drastic or new. Still haven't managed to make things all that much significantly faster than they were beforehand. So, performance is an ongoing issue. Yeah, that's about all I think I really have for now. So.